everyone for joining us today. And of course, a big thank you to the Sandbox for their partnership with us for this event. My name is Ryan Ferteon. I'm a senior account manager with BDC here in Barrie. We've been doing this event with Barriston and BDO for a number of years now, and we look forward to sharing our insights with you today for the path ahead. As always for this event, we have our Chief Economist, Pierre Cléroux, here to give us an economic outlook for 2021. We'll have time for a few questions for Pierre, which will then be followed by our panel discussion. Joining us for the panel discussion, we've got Janice Mumberson, Senior Associate at Barriston Law, Laura Gibbons, Senior Consultant, Human Resources Consulting at BDO, David Ronald, the owner of the Crazy Fox Bistro, Ron MacArthur, the President of Wolf Steel, and Denise Sindel-Tucker, the owner of Olive Oil Co., all of whom will discuss how they embrace the change as a result of COVID-19. So to start us off, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Pierre Cléroux, Vice President, Research and Chief Economist at BDC. Pierre leads a team of experts who analyze economic data to identify business and sector trends that impact us all. He's also responsible for providing economic analysis and advice to the bank's senior management team, and he supervises all marketing and industry research activities. He's held several influential positions as an economist over the last 25 years that had a direct impact on entrepreneurs in Canada and overseas. So Pierre, we're very much looking forward to your insight, and I'll now pass the mic over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to upload my presentation and we'll be ready to go. My presentation today has three parts. So first, I'm going to talk about where we are in terms of the recovery that after 2020. I'm going to talk about our forecast for 2021. And finally, I'm going to conclude my presentation with about talking how the business environment is going to look like after this pandemic. So first, as you know, COVID-19 had a huge impact on the world economy. You can see here that except China, all the major economies had a contraction in 2020. So the United States, Japan, Germany, Canada, all these countries had a contraction between 3 and 5%. And some countries was in even worse shape, like France, Mexico, and the United Kingdom, contraction almost around 10%. So COVID-19 had a huge impact on the world economy. But the good news is the world economy is coming back pretty quickly. The rebound is actually very fast. When we look at the world trade volume, we can see that we're already back to the pre-crisis level. If we compare to the 2008-2009 recession, the recovery is much faster. And this is what is different about this recession. This is not a financial crisis. This is not an oil crisis or, there's no bubble that's exploded or something. It's a self-imposed recession because government has to put some restriction on the economy to make sure that the number of cases, we can control the number of cases and we protect our healthcare system. So this is quite different than a normal recession. The good news is what we learned in 2020 is when you lift the restrictions on an economy or on a sector, this sector is coming back very quickly. So this is a good news about this recession. I'm going to come back to that when I talk about our forecast for 2021. So the United States now, as you know, 85% of Ontario export is going south of the border. So this is a very important economy for us. The graph that you see is the number of new cases per million people. In blue, you have the United States. In red, you have Canada. As you can see from this graph, we are having a second wave in Canada, but nothing compared to the United States. The second wave has been extremely difficult in the United States. And as a result, this has really slowed down the recovery of the economy. The United States lost 20 million jobs. The initial recovery was quite strong, but over the last few months, because of the second wave, it's difficult for the economy to create new jobs. So in the US, we're still 10 million jobs out compared to the pre-crisis level. And in terms of manufacturing, production is still below the February level. And in terms of retail came back very quickly, helped by a government program. But since we didn't have any other program to help Americans since, you can see retail sales is actually slowing down. It's going negative, it's declining, has been declining for a few months. So the situation in the US is actually quite difficult, difficult on two fronts. First, on the virus front, there's a lot of cases, very hard for the US to control that. And second, the economy is kind of on pause as well. The good news is the new government has introduced a number of programs that is going to help the recovery. The first one, and for me, one of the most important one, is on the vaccination front. They promise to have 100 million Americans vaccinated in the next 100 days. That sounds very ambitious, but it's possible since the United States produced one of the vaccine. Second, they are also going to introduce a program to help the recovery of the economy. $1,900 billion. This number is so big that it's hard to pronounce, but this is a major number that is going to help the recovery of the US economy. And by rebound, is going to have a positive impact on the Canadian economy as well. So we are optimistic that in 2021, the economy is really going to recover. We're not the only one who is confident about the US economy. Businesses in the US are quite confident. The level of confidence is actually back to the pre-crisis level. So our forecast for the US is a growth of 3.5%, which will follow a contraction in 2020 of 3.5%. So we expect by the end of 2021, the economy won't be back to the pre-crisis level, but will be close to. So we should have a very good year in 2021. Canada now, the impact of COVID-19 has been really hard on businesses. 76% of businesses in Canada have seen their sales decrease. 45%, almost half SMEs, had to lay off some people, so that's really difficult. And 39% have increased their debt during the year to go through this crisis. So as you can see, COVID-19 had a huge impact on businesses. But it was also true on Canadian. The graph that you see is the volume or the number of jobs in Canada. We lost 3 million jobs at the beginning of this pandemic. The initial recovery, as you can see from the graph, has been quite fast, and we have recuperated about 2 million jobs pretty quickly. But the second wave is really having an impact on the recovery as well. Just in January, we lost more than 200,000 jobs in Canada, half of them in Quebec, half of them in Ontario. Both provinces has introduced restriction to deal with the virus, and as a result, the economy has slowed down. So that's basically where we are today. In terms of sectors, well, the recovery is quite different from one sector to another. Financial services has been doing well. There's actually more Canadian working in this sector right now than in February. Manufacturing is 100%, so it's back to normal. Construction, 96%, which is close. For the economy, we are at 96% of the level of job of February. But if you look at the bottom of the graph, you can see that some sectors are having more difficulties. Accommodation and food services is definitely the sector that is most impacted. There's a lot of restrictions imposed by the government because of COVID-19, and as a result, it's difficult for this sector to rebound. The good news is the recovery in Canada is actually better than in other developed economies. And here I have the US. So we did better in to recover the economy than other developed economies. There's two reasons for that. The first one is we had a better control of the virus. The number of cases was per capita was much lower in Canada than in the US or other major developed economies like United Kingdom or Germany or France. The second reason is our government has introduced a number of programs to help Canadians and also Canadian businesses, and that's really helped the recovery as well. An example is government transfer to Canadians, to people, has increased by 60% or by more than $200 billion. As a result, our disposable income in Canada has increased and is still more elevated than it was before the crisis. The disposable income is the total revenues that people are receiving. So from salary, pension, investment, and government programs, minus the tax that we pay. So that's basically the money we have in our pocket. So as you can see from this graph, we have, as Canadian, more money in our pocket today than we did before the crisis. So that's really helped the recovery. For example, retail sales in Canada, after a decline during the pandemic, is increasing. It's actually it's higher today than it was just before the beginning of the pandemic. So these programs introduced by the government has really helped the recovery in Canada. In Ontario now, well, as you know, the second wave has been quite difficult in Ontario, just like in Quebec, in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. All these provinces had a strong second wave. And that's really having an impact on the economies. You can see Ontario is about the same level as Canada, and it has slowed down in January just because of the restriction that the government had to impose to manage the number of cases. In terms of sectors, the situation is a bit similar to the rest of the country. The financial services has been doing very well. Manufacturing is 102%. There's actually 30,000 more people working in manufacturing in Ontario today than before the pandemic. So the manufacturing sector came back pretty quickly. Construction, 95%. Again, if you look at the bottom of the graph, accommodation and food services are really hurt by this pandemic because of the restrictions we have to impose because of the virus. This is a good example. This is the level of employment in hotels and restaurants in Ontario. And I wanted to show you this graph to show you how the direct correlation between the virus and the economy. So first, at the beginning of the pandemic, remember, restaurants were closed. So actually the restaurant sector lost half of their jobs until April. During the summer, the situation really improved. Some of the restrictions were lifted. And then the level of the job really increased until September. And then we had the second wave where there's more restriction on restaurants. And as you can see, the level of job is going down. So there's two conclusions to draw from this graph. The first one is there's a direct correlation between the restriction we impose on the economy and the level of jobs. So this is very important. It makes the point to really control the virus, because when the number of cases is going too high, well, you have really a negative impact on the economy. The second point I wanted to make is you can see from this graph that when you lift the restrictions, the economy is coming back very quickly. In this case, the restaurant sector. So this is a very good news for 2021 as we get vaccinated. And well, the plan is that most Canadians are going to be vaccinated before the end of the summer. While we understand from the experience in 2020 that these sectors that have restrictions, they are going to come back very quickly when we lift the restriction. So this is an interesting graph to remember. The rest of the economy will be similar to that. So the manufacturing has been doing well, but the situation for different kind of manufacturing is quite different. If you look at food, there was no recession for the food manufacturers in Ontario. Same thing for chemical. Well, it was a bit different for transport equipment. As you can see, there was a huge decline at the beginning of the pandemic, but the situation came back. And the situation is quite different between automotive and aerospace. Automotive is coming back. It was at 112% last summer, has been slowing down a little bit, but it should come back to the pre-crisis level in 2021. Well, aerospace is a different story. They have lost about 50% of their sales. That's a huge amount. This is not surprising because, as you know, we don't travel anymore. So the demand for airplanes, even for parts, are really down. So that's the reason why this sector is really affected. It's going to take some time, probably a few years, before we travel as much as before the pandemic, and it will take as long for this sector to rebound. The housing market is kind of the surprise of this pandemic. Every economist is surprised by that. Look at Ontario. The housing starts last year increased by 16.3%. That's really amazing. And in terms of home sales, well, the situation has really been good as well, both in Ontario and in Canada. So this is surprising because usually when you have a recession, you have a slowdown in the housing market, which didn't happen in 2020. Low interest rate also According to different surveys we did, Canadians are looking for bigger houses because they work from home. So it's a combination of factors that is explaining why the housing market has been performing so well. Nevertheless, it's a good news. It's a good news for jobs because there's a lot of construction job related to the housing market. We believe that 2021 is going to be also a good year for the housing market, both in Ontario and in Canada. So as you can see, the recovery has been good in general. The Canadian economy has been recovering faster than other developed economies. But nevertheless, we still have a long way to go before we go back to their normal situation. So what should we expect for 2021? Well, our forecast for the Canadian economy is a growth of 4.5% after a contraction last year of over 5%. So this forecast is quite strong. We believe that 2021 is going to be the year of the recovery. And there's 5 reasons for that. First, and the most important one, is the vaccine. Although, if you look at this graph, Canada is a bit lagging compared to other developed economies in terms of the doses that we have administered so far. We are still very optimistic that most Canadians are going to be vaccinated by the end of the summer. And this is going to make a huge difference. If that's the case, a lot of restrictions that we impose right now are going to be lifted. And we understand that when we lift restrictions on a sector, the sector is coming back very quickly. The recovery is pretty fast. And that's basically what we are expecting in 2021. The second reason why we are optimistic is because commodity prices has been doing well and they continue to do very well. If you look at the yellow line, for example, that's the price, or that's the index of the price of lumber. And this has been really good and really helping many parts of the country, of course, including Ontario, where you have a very large lumber sector. So commodity prices has really helped the recovery so far and will continue for 2021. Oil price, which is it's not on this graph, is going to also to rebound this year as most people are going to be vaccinated in developed economies around the world, which is going to help also the economy. The third reason is the government policies and programs has helped so far the recovery, and they will continue to help the recovery in 2021. These programs by the federal government are still into effect, and this will continue to support the growth. On top of it, the Ontario government has different programs to help the recovery. For example, they are going to accelerate the infrastructure project of $143 billion. So this is going to accelerate the recovery in 2021. And of course, interest rates are low, and we believe they are going to remain low for the next 2 years. So this is helping the recovery of the economy. The fourth reason is coming from consumers. The graph that you see is actually the savings from Canadian every quarter. As you can see, before the pandemic, Canadians were saving between 6 to 15 billion every quarter, while in the last 12 months, Canadians have been saving $187 billion. So this is not surprising. In every recession, consumers tend to save money because there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people are, am I going to lose my job or not? So people postpone major ticket item. For example, I'm not going to change my car this year because of the uncertainty. Well, the year after each recession, consumers are spending more. And that's exactly what we believe is going to happen in 2021. When most people are going to be vaccinated, restrictions are going to be lifted. We will be able to go to restaurants, bars, travel. The uncertainty is not going to be there. So we believe that consumers are going to spend a lot of money this year, and this is going to help the economy to rebound. Finally, on the business side, business investment intention that you see for Ontario in blue here has really improved over the last 12 months. They're still negative, but it's a balance of opinion. So there's more businesses who are going to invest this year than in 2020. We're not back to the pre-crisis level, but the situation has really improved over the last 12 months. So this is the 5 reasons why we believe that 2021 is going to be the year of the recovery. But there's a risk to this forecast, and the risk is COVID-19 itself. Basically, this forecast is based on the fact that the vaccine is going to be distributed largely. Most Canadians should get vaccinated before the end of the summer. So the recovery is starting now, will accelerate during the year, and should really be booming on the second half of 2021. But there's a risk. Of course, if for some reason there's a delay in the vaccination in Canada, well, the recovery is going to be delayed as well. Today, we are optimistic. We understand that the Canadian government still believe that most people are going to be vaccinated by the end of the summer. So we believe that this year is going to be a good year, a year of a recovery. The last part of my presentation is about how our business environment is changing. And there's four trends that we are seeing. The first one is the online business. The graph that you see is actually real number in terms of the volume of the online transactions in Canada. So if you look in February 2020, there was $1.6 billion in terms of the online business in Canada. The last number that we have is November 2020, and the number now is 4.3 billion. So in only a few months, the online business has tripled in Canada. So this is not a new trend. The online business was present before, but the pandemic has really accelerated this trend. More and more Canadians are buying online. And the research we're doing shows that Canadians will continue to buy online even more. 42% of Canadians told us only a few weeks ago that they're going to spend more in the next 6 months. If you look at younger people, well, this number is even higher at 50%. So a lot of Canadians took the habit to buy online, and now they will continue to do it. And on the business side, our research is showing that Canadian businesses are investing more to increase their presence online. So they're investing to improve their website. They are more active on social media. They have marketing campaign online. So a lot of entrepreneurs have seen the potential of the online business, and they are investing into it. The second trend is the teleworking. A lot of people today are probably watching this webinar from home. Actually, 40% of Canadians are working from home today. That's a huge number. The question is, what will happen after this pandemic is over? Well, we believe that this trend is going to continue because a lot of Canadians want to work from home. And also, our research with businesses is showing that businesses are much more open today about teleworking than before. The perception is much better today. Over the last year, a lot of people have been working from home. Businesses realize the benefits of that for them as well. So we believe that teleworking is here to stay, and we're going to have a lot of teleworking in the future. The third trend, it's a bit surprising again. Businesses are investing more in technology than ever before. So during the recession last year, we saw an increase in technology investment. And the reason a lot of businesses invested to have a better presence online or to get equipped for teleworking, but also a lot of businesses invested to reduce their costs. Revenue were down last year, and one action that a lot of businesses took is to invest in technology, like in ERP system, in improving their processes to become more efficient and reduce their costs. According to our research, 67% of business are going to invest more in technology in the next 12 months. And finally, the last trend, which is actually back to the future, I would say, labor shortage is back. As you know, before the pandemic, it was difficult to find workers. And this is a study from the Bank of Canada is showing that this issue is coming back very quickly. As the economy is improving, we're going to see more and more labor shortage in Ontario and in Canada. So this is fundamental because the Canadian economy, actually the Canadian people are aging. So there's a lot of Canadians retiring, not a lot of young people to replace them. And on top of it, in 2020, we had to reduce the number of immigrants coming to Ontario and in Canada because of the pandemic. So the situation in the next 3 months is going to be quite difficult. So you have, as a business person, you have to think about this. You have to prepare yourself. You have to find solutions to be able to recruit. So 4 trends that are going to shape our new business environment. The online business is really accelerating, and that's really important to understand. More and more Canadians are going to work from home in the future. Businesses are investing in technology, which is a great news, but this is a great momentum that is happening right now. And finally, labor shortages will be back in 2021. So in conclusion, the recovery is well on the way, and 2021 should be the year of the recovery after the recession we experienced in 2020. The only risk is actually the way we're going to manage the COVID-19, and especially the way we're going to get vaccinated. If everything goes well, most Canadians are going to be vaccinated by the end of the summer. Most restrictions on our economy are going to be lifted, and the economy is going to really rebound this year. So I'm going to stop here. I understand we have time for questions, so I'm open to any of your questions.
That's great. Thank you, Pierre. Very informative, and thanks for sharing your insights with us. So we now have, yeah, like Pierre was saying, some time for a few questions. If you want to type them in your chat window there. I guess I'll get us started. So Pierre, there's obviously through COVID, there's been lots of federal and provincial support on economic recovery. And now we've got these very large deficits. So what are your thoughts on how this debt will be reduced?
Well, that's a very good question. The good news is we had a very good starting point. So our debt to GDP ratio in Canada was lower than in most developed economies. So we started very good. Well, like you said, we increased our deficit in a very good big way, both in Canada and in provinces. I think governments are going to take some time. They're not going to try to fix that in the next few years. They will probably have a 10-year program, and they will probably try to avoid increased taxes or reduce services. The next few years, government are going to be busy to help the recovery. So the last thing you want to do is to increase taxes. So I think they are going to take a longer term to rebalance their budget, and they are going to do it by growth of the economy and not taxes.
Perfect, perfect. And then next question, are there going to be less physical businesses in the future given the increase in online shopping?
I think it's going to be a mix of the two. We definitely see that the online business is accelerating. So, but at the same time, people sometimes they like to go directly to the store to look at the products or to be able to compare. So my vision is that we're going to have smaller stores, but stores anyway, but we're going to continue to increase our online business. So depending of your business, it's a great business model to be able to do both.
Okay. How much is the rolling back or ending of the stimulus measures going to dampen the recovery as it takes surplus cash out of the overall economy?
That's a very good question, and that's a question that we're meeting a lot of government right now to talk about the economy, and that's basically the question that is really on the table. Um, what governments are going to try to do is to phase out these programs as the economy is improving. So they shouldn't do it before, and you don't want to keep it too long, so because it's expensive. So in the perfect world, you will phase out the programs as the economy is rebounding. But we all know that the perfect world doesn't exist. So my guess is most of these programs are going to end by the end of the summer, and we should really have a recovery by that time. So businesses shouldn't be too hurt by that.
Okay. With the shift to working from home or working remotely, what's the bank's view on the impact to commercial office space?
I think it's going to be a slow market for the next few years, especially in the large downtown area. So far, what we have been seeing that the area that has been the most affected are very large downtown area like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, not so much in the smaller cities. So, um, and also one of the reason is if you work in Toronto, you really, know that it takes 2 hours to get there. So it's not uncommon for people working downtown Toronto to take an hour and a half, even 2 hours to go to work. So these people are the one who really want to work more from home. So that's the reason why the large downtown area are going to be more affected. And it's going to take few years before commercial commercial real estate activities is back to normal.
So there's a concern that the US will shut down Line 5 that goes through Michigan and Wisconsin to Sarnia. Given this is where the supply of propane comes from for Ontario and Quebec, what could be the economic fallout of this?
Well, I would be honest, I'm not exactly sure about this issue, so I'm going to pass on this question.
Okay, no problem, no problem. And then, so I guess follow up: how will the new administration south of the border impact Canada?
Well, in general, I think it's going to be positive because I think that our relationship is going to be much more stable, and we don't expect to see tariff imposed on Canada anymore, except for lumber, which has been around for a long time. But having said that, I think everybody saw since Mr. Biden has been elected that he has made decisions that he believes are good for the U.S. For example, he canceled Keystone. He's going to introduce new regulation about buying the Buy America Act. We're not sure exactly how this is going to be impacting Canada because we don't have the detail yet. But so I think overall, I think it's going to be positive for Canada. But at the same time, we have to realize that we sometimes have different interests, and Mr. Biden is going to do what he believes is good for the U.S.
Perfect. And then it looks like last question here. Do you think vaccination will be mandatory in order to help the economy recover?
I don't think so for two reasons. I don't think it's not really Canadian to do that. We are a democracy. I think it will be difficult to do that. Also, we don't need 100% vaccination. I'm not a health expert, but I understand that if you get 75 to 80%, that's enough to reopen fully the economy.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions we have. So Pierre, thank you very much for your insight and for your time today. So now I'd like to pass the mic over to Janice at Barriston, who's going to begin the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you, Pierre, for your presentation. It is my pleasure to host and help moderate our second panel that the Entrepreneurs in Action event has presented. We felt that with the past year, we really wanted to showcase some of our local businesses from a variety of sectors and industries that, just like other businesses in Ontario and Canada, have had to really lean on their core strengths and pivot to address the challenges that were thrown at them in 2020. So I'm very pleased to welcome to the panel four members. So Laura Gibbons, who is a senior consultant, specifically with human resource consulting at BDO. Ron MacArthur, who is the president of Wolf Steel Ltd., which is part of the Napoleon Group of Corporations, which in 2020 was distributing and exporting to over 69 countries around the world. I'm also pleased to welcome Denise Sindel-Tucker, who is the owner of Olive Oil Co., which has 3 permanent locations in Barrie and Newmarket and a strong online sales presence. And David Ronald, who is the owner of Crazy Fox Bistro here in Barrie. David himself has been in the hospitality industry for more than 20 years, and of course is now the owner and spearheading Crazy Fox Bistro, which has been a fixture in Barrie for over 35 years. So welcome to our panelists. And I would like to kick things off just by asking each of you, maybe one by one, Laura, then Ron, then Denise, then David, to talk about how COVID impacted your business and which of your core strengths you felt you most had to lean on in order to keep doing business as best you could during 2020. And Laura, recognizing that you're a consultant, maybe just give us some indication of how you've seen your own clients draw on core strengths and how they had to pivot during this time to address the challenges thrown at them.
Yeah, so we definitely had to pivot as a group. We have consultants across the country, and we had to pivot in order to understand all these programs that were coming out and the rapid changing of them last March and April. We were answering hundreds and hundreds of calls from various clients across the country on what are these programs, what's WorkShare, how can I keep my business afloat, all of these issues. But really what we've seen from a lot of our clients over the last year is the need to put in proper policies to address these types of disruption in business. How do I assist people from working from home? How do I assist people with childcare issues as we all remain at home? It's been a lot of different issues, but we've done a lot of organizational reviews and compensation reviews. Clients are really wanting to remain competitive. As Pierre said, it's tough to get good talent right now, and in order to really bolster your own offering to employees. So I would say that's been the focus over the last year or so.
Thank you so much, Laura. I know I'm speaking for Barriston here. We were really, really lucky that the partners had invested in technology in the past. So when the call did come to send people home to work, we were able to do that fairly quickly. And I think you're right. People are one of the biggest strengths, and we were able to pivot with the change in the need to work from home, and technology and our people enabled us to do that. Ron, what was your take on it, and what did you find you had to do at Wolf Steel Ltd?
Well, after we got over the absolute fear that this gigantic freight train was coming down at us and we had no clue what was going to be the end result, we quickly kind of gathered our teams together, and we really had two mandates, and that was to protect the health and safety of our associates right out of the gate. And with that, we shut down our manufacturing facilities for 4 weeks. And what we did during those 4 weeks is everything that we knew of through public health, to sanitize, to socially distance, to completely rework our entire manufacturing facilities so that we could, when we could come back, you know, they were single entrances, there were screening stations, all the washrooms, all the lunchrooms were shut down, all of the business manufacturing processes had 6 feet between them, masks, etc. We were far ahead of many of the protocols actually that the government did. And then like the guys at BDO, we were very fortunate that we had invested heavily in technology. So within 2 days, our 450 some office team were sent home to work from home, and are still working primarily from home. There's some that support the manufacturing facilities. But what we noticed with our customers, because we still were shipping some of our product in demand, those customers that had online presence then and websites, so it was really interesting when Pierre showed the huge increase in online, those customers actually today are seeing their revenue at the end of 2020 even grow and not shrink as many of the storefronts were. So protection of our team, return to work was really the order of the day, so to speak. So very similar to what the BDO folks are saying.
Fantastic. And I think you're right. That was one thing we noticed at Barriston too. Certain corporate clients in certain industries, home improvement, and certainly anyone who was manufacturing anything that added to the enjoyment of a home or environment, they were seeing sales through the roof, which was terrific.
When we saw that first, and we saw that like March, the sales just dropped. April, we basically had no sales, started to come back a little bit in May, and then the floodgates just opened up with our barbecues for outdoor, for our fireplaces. The housing market, both in the US and Canada, boomed right out of the gate and is still doing that. And everybody needed an air conditioner, a new air conditioner, a furnace. Any of our product lines have been in high demand and are still in very, very high demand. And we're very fortunate for that.
Now, was that something that you needed? Did you need to address your ability to respond to that demand, or was it just the actual?
Our biggest challenge, and again, Pierre, we didn't see a labor shortage coming. We experienced it. As we saw the demand, we needed to hire almost 200 additional associates through kind of the summertime into the fall. to cut or keep up with our demand of our product. And we quite honestly couldn't get them. People were comfortable staying at home, getting a government subsidy versus coming back and working in a hot factory. And we just got our labor numbers up to where we needed them to meet the demand starting in December. And we're good now. But it took us 4 to 5 months to get the number of new associates that we had to bring on. And that was our biggest challenge all through the fall. We were job fairs, it was all so much virtually. It was our HR team just did a brilliant job of trying to attract the right number of associates to our facilities here in Barrie.
And I think that's a theme we'll come back to. Denise, I know that you have a strong online presence for the olive oil company. So what happened in your business when COVID first hit? And what were the core strengths that you drew upon in order to sort of respond to the challenges presented by COVID for you in 2020?
Right. Thank you, Janice. The first thing we did was try to assess the situation. I mean, it sort of felt, to Ron's point, like we were in for a war or in for some sort of really rough weather. So the first thing we did was make sure that we had all the policies in place so that our employees would be safe. Then we put into place some policies and sanitization, that sort of thing in place so that our customers would be safe. The difference, I suppose, between my retail business and many other retail businesses is that we're considered an essential service. Right. So we were still allowed to be open with restrictions. So that was the first thing we did. We were fortunate in that we already had a website developed for our business. We had a very small online sales, very low online sales, to be quite honest. We saw about 700% increase in online sales pretty quickly. So the result of that meant that we had to change our physical space so that we could better support the online business that we were seeing. So we amped up our preparation space, our warehouse space. We tried our best to deal with manufacturing shortages because as the manufacturers couldn't have as many people in their warehouse, we started to run out of things in our retail store. And staying on top of that in store and online for a number of locations was very challenging. It was probably the most challenging thing that we had to deal with. And I think the sacrifices that we had to make with respect to revenue, online is great, curbside pickup is fantastic, but it's not the same as coming into a physical location. So quite honestly, we had 2/3 of our workforce laid off for a period of time and only 1 out of 3 locations open. So out of 18 staff, we really had to deal a lot with the emotional and mental health crisis that came with having to downsize our workforce for a period of time. We did see that come back. And we're really pleased that we were able to power through that particular time.
And I think Denise, again, we're talking about sort of the people that we rely on to run businesses. And I'd like to introduce our third panelist on that note, David Ronald, who's the owner of Crazy Fox Bistro. And I know, David, for you, part and parcel of the success of Crazy Fox has always been delivering an experience. So with the challenges posed by COVID, particularly to the food and hospitality industry, tell us a little bit about what that meant for your business and how you were able to respond.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. Operating a restaurant during COVID-19 has been a struggle. Throughout the pandemic, there have been many new requirements, guidelines, and restrictions, posing many challenges to restaurant owners, including us at the Crazy Fox Bistro. In response to COVID-19, we were under the assumption that it would be temporary. So we closed the restaurant, had to lay off all of our employees. It was a heartbreaking decision. We'd had an attempted break-in, smashed window at the beginning, but we remained optimistic from the beginning. We were hoping that our battle with restrictions in COVID-19 would only last a couple of weeks. We could get back to regular business, like you said, providing exceptional quality food to our patrons and employment to our hardworking staff. After the first few weeks with no end in sight for restaurants returning to normal business, I had to do something. Monthly rental costs hit us the hardest. Now preparations had to be made and adjustments implemented. The Crazy Fox has been a pillar for dining in Barrie and surrounding area for over 35 years. And I had only owned the Crazy Fox for only 2 years at the time. So losing it was the last thing that I wanted. It was a possibility with no fault of my own. I needed to exhaust all of my options to keep it going. I had to do everything I could to make it work. We never advertised or offered curbside pickup before. All of a sudden, we started getting calls from guests to see if we were offering takeout. I had my telephone forwarded to home, so I didn't miss a call. I took names and numbers for future communication. The community was asking, and we started adapting. Other challenges were at this time were takeout, food supplies, staffing, I guess like most people, and packaging. COVID-19 has impacted food supply for ordering, availability, and cost. Again, with the ever-changing restrictions, any kind of planning was difficult. My next hurdle was when I contacted staff. Quite a few weren't willing to come back, even though I needed certain ones. With more education in regards to COVID-19, workplace safety, and COVID-19 protocols in place, we had some that felt comfortable returning. We're completely closed about 4 weeks, but once supply, staffing, and packaging were in place, I created a menu and started to return phone calls from people who had previously inquired. Additionally, reached out to as many of our regular clients to tell them we were offering a takeout menu. With limited staff consisting of 2 chefs and myself, we created Fox in a Box was conceived. Orders and payment were taken over the phone and delivered to the trunk of people's vehicles. Now the restrictions, we got the patio open, so it helped a little bit, anything would help. And then we were able to get things inside. But we came up to our busiest time again, and with, November through the holiday season, normally our busiest time. Annually, we host several functions, office parties, and gatherings, but we're forced to shut down the dining room with another lockdown. It has been a struggle. For a small restaurant, we are still currently offering Fox in a Box. We're, really appreciative for our staff, their creativity and perseverance, and to the community for their continued support. We're looking forward to the future and hope that the Crazy Fox Bistro can continue to be a staple in the community of Barrie and surrounding area for years to come.
Awesome. And so, David, you mentioned Fox in a Box, which is something that sort of came as a result of your inability to invite people into your restaurant. Is that something you'll keep going forward, or how has what you've had to put in place, how is that going to translate to the future of your business?
Yeah, because honestly, it's fine dining, and we didn't do any takeout before. So at the end of this, I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to get out, and we'll keep it going. As long as we can accommodate it. It is a small restaurant, but if we can accommodate it, even through the weekends are usually pretty good in here, but definitely could be another stream of revenue for us for sure. So
perfect. And then Denise, you mentioned that you saw a 700% increase in your online sales. So as part of a retail industry, is that something having made a lasting impact on your industry, or at least on your business? What do you think will have a permanent change, or may have a permanent mark?
Well, it's easy. Sorry. It's really easy to say that we had a 700% increase in online sales. For sure. For sure. It's really easy to say we had a 700% increase in online sales, but we had a 95% decrease in in-person sales. So we had to change the way we were packaging our product, the way we were putting products together. And we did also invest through the Digital Main Street program in our online presence quite significantly at the beginning of 2020, just by chance, about 6 weeks prior to the pandemic starting. So we are continuing to invest in our online presence and in our website as well.
And then Ron, you had mentioned that you've made quite a few changes to the actual physical manufacturing line. Are those changes that you would keep in place?
Yes.
As we sort of move forward with vaccinations, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now it's at a point where it's working very efficiently. What we will see happening is, though, once the vaccine comes into play and things go back to normal, our lunchrooms now are spread all over. At first, we asked our associates to have their lunch in their cars, because we just didn't want them to be congregating. But the majority, I would say, of the changes that we've made to the manufacturing facilities and logistics will still stay. And we're now in the process of redesigning all of our offices. We've got about 9 different office locations within our facilities to make them more COVID safe. Is that a better word for it? I guess social distancing, more rest areas, and more along the world of the return to work and what does that environment do? Maybe not singular stations where you go to and you have all your pictures around you. Maybe it'll be more freer, and therefore we'll have more open spaces, more maybe bistro type. We're just kind of looking to understand what the trends in the return to work will be. As Pierre said, we don't anticipate the return to work to happen at Napoleon till probably late summer. And then we're calling and working, we're a hybrid. It'll be something significantly different where 100% of our team was in the offices. And that's a worry to me because the DNA and the culture of Napoleon is our people. We had a lot of fun. We got a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of collaboration, and Zoom and team meetings and all of that are great. And we're keeping in touch and communicating, but that people contact is what more and more I find our associates missing. And so what does that hybrid model look like? Well, whatever we develop today, I'm sure by the time August and September happens, it'll be a little bit different. We're seeing probably 20% of our team want to come back because their husbands are at home or their spouses are at home, their kids are working, schooling, and they're all at a kitchen table. And then the others want different degrees, to some of them saying, I want to work full time at home. It works really well for me. So we're still working through what that looks like and being more amenable. But I think Pierre said before the COVID hit, we never even considered working from home. It just wasn't part of what our processes were, where after it'll be way more flexible in our opinion.
And I think that's such a great point. One of the questions to Pierre and one of the comments was talking about what's the impact on the commercial office space market. Yeah. And certainly we do a lot of commercial leasing at Barriston. So the initial questions about, do I still have an obligation to pay rent and things like that? We dealt with those with the rent benefit. And I suspect that what we'll see is more flexibility in terms of tenant fixturing and broader provisions with respect to permitted usage, because so many businesses found that they had these use provisions saying we're a manufacturer, but they didn't have allowances to allow customers to pull up and load things in the back of their minivan. And that was one of the key changes, is rethinking how businesses were using their spaces and what that allows them to do with their own people, but also their own product and service delivery models going forward.
Absolutely.
Now, Laura, that's a great question for you as well. So you just heard Ron talking about flexibility with respect to work from home policies and various policies related to how people occupy and use space at Wolf Steel Ltd. What are you seeing in terms of your clients coming to you to help them draft their policies and trends for the future in terms of HR policies?
Yeah, we're having a lot of clients ask, what if employees don't want to come back? And how do we enforce them to come back? And we keep saying the whole thing is to be flexible. So have a policy in place that is consistent, but also it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. So if someone says, I'm working really well from home, they're meeting all of their deadlines and their metrics, and everything seems to be going well, and maybe they're not needed every day in the office, maybe they don't come back 5 days a week, maybe they come back part-time, and maybe you reevaluate every few months. We keep saying it doesn't have to be something you agree to and is set in stone right away. I think we can all agree that last year everyone's had to pivot. So I always say, like, it can be something that's reevaluated. But if an employee is saying they don't feel safe coming back, that's a bit of a different approach. It is the employer's responsibility to do everything reasonable to ensure a safe environment for the employees. So I always tell them, start with the conversation, remind them of all the protocols that you already have in place, because keep in mind, some people have been at home for a year and maybe they don't realize that, we do have sanitation stations. We are wearing masks. We are separated offices, all of those things. And then finally, I ask them, what are their exact concerns? Because maybe it is an oversight on the organization's part. And maybe it's just more that anxiety of, now I have to go back and I'm used to being at home. So usually the conversation with the employee is best, but maybe it works well that they work from home 3 days a week and only come in 2 days. Is their job really necessary in the office? All those things need to be asked, but it's definitely a hot topic right now.
And one of the things that Ron mentioned, which I'm sure is on the minds of many business owners, is with respect to the culture of a corporation or a business, how it's often the DNA is in its people. So what do you do to keep employees engaged and motivated if they are working remotely?
Yeah, so right now when we have to be working remotely, you have to get a little creative. So we always encourage clients to, maybe have a meeting that's not work related. So maybe it's, at the end of the day, one of the days, and you're all just chatting about what's going on that week personally. How are the kids doing? All those things to make them feel connected. Kind of those conversations you'd have when you're grabbing a coffee or maybe on your lunch break that you're no longer having. And then we have had clients say that they're seeing a real drop in culture because people do like being in the office. They like that camaraderie and they miss those relationships. So it's hard to find that balance. But I think that's hopefully when we can go back to the office, those people will be the ones that return. And then you'll have that balance of people that maybe strive at working at home.
Yeah.
So I'll throw that question out to the other panelists. What have been some things you've tried in order to reach out to employees? What's been successful? Ron, I think I'm sure you've had to turn your mind to this.
Daily, hourly. Well, it's twofold for us because we've got, now almost 60% of our team working either in our logistics centers and manufacturing facilities, and then we've got the balance at home. The ones that are working, we have daily startup meetings, communication, bulletins. So that's business as usual in the communication process. A little bit more obviously stringent screening, obviously, to get into the facilities. It's much harder today to do that, which is safety related. Working from home, it's a lot of communication, webinars, a lot of 4:30, 5 o'clock Zoom cocktail hours by different departments. At Christmas time, I was saying, can't we just have one company one? I think I had one Friday before Christmas, 7 Zoom meetings at 4 o'clock. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think I can have 7 drinks in that period of time. But no, the individual managers have done an excellent job of communicating, keeping the spirits, celebrating birthdays on Zoom meetings, celebrating retirements. We had one gal retire, and what all of the associates in that department did a drive-by with balloons by her house and stuff like that. She was just broken up. So it's just the creativity. But the most important thing we're talking about, especially those working from home, is look after yourself. That wellness balance, you just can't sit in front of a monitor for 7 or 8 or 9 hours a day. Look after yourself and don't feel guilty if you're not coping as well as somebody else. Cope and deal. And we've got a lot of our HR people in the wellness area that really spend a lot of time chatting with the people and the people that are working in the factories that are concerned about their health, their safety, and all that. There's a lot of mental challenges that we've never ever seen or heard, and to even talk about it, I'm feeling stressed. 2 years ago, we probably never even knew what that meant. Just, hey, get on and do it. So being a lot more aware of people have different ways of adapting to this whole COVID relationship. And working from home, it's got some great benefits, especially when I'm about 40 minutes south of Barrie. So I don't miss those knuckle drives up the 400 when it's snowing and sleeting behind a snowplow. But there's some challenges as well, especially if your whole family's working from home. It's a big challenge. I know one of the gals, like we said, she had to go to the garage into her car to have a Teams meeting just to get some clarity. So just be aware of it and saying, reach out when you need to, and reach out to not just us in the management or the HR side, to your fellow associates. But creativity is the most exciting thing when you see all the different things that are happening.
That's great. I know one thing that we've really found is that for certain roles, if you don't have to be working between 9 to 5, especially for people with children who are school age, they've shifted their work hours, and being flexibility with that and the ability to be flexible in those types of roles was just so helpful.
And the element of trust comes into play. We're very, very, the question was, how the heck are we going to manage all of these people where we used to see them in our offices and they'd come in at 8:30 or whatever and leave at 5. But the productivity of our teams, there hasn't dropped one iota. That commitment to getting their job done is just so inherent in their bodies, I guess, that we've not worried about that at all. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah. And then I know Denise and David, slightly different circumstances for you guys, because you work very much in a physical space and need your employees to be in those physical spaces as well. Do you have any comments with respect to how to kind of keep up morale or efforts you've made to sort of ensure communications have been open and two-way communications throughout the time that you've had to lay people off, or during the time that you're trying to bolster spirits while you're going through these challenges?
Yeah, if I could comment on that, Janice, I think it's been tough. I mean, we don't see everyone on the team all the time anyway. So we have a communication system in the store, and we all text each other, and there are email updates and that sort of thing. I'm actually working on, and I don't want to say it out loud, but I'm working on a video right now for the staff about some of the new stuff that's happened since it seems forever that some of them have been in the store. We did some gifting to employees as well. Just wanted to let them know we used a local business. It was Cakes by Design, actually.
Oh, yes.
And we sent the whole team like a box of cupcakes at one point, just to let them know during the first shutdown that we were still thinking of them and we wanted them to come back. We're looking at doing some online sort of brainstorming sessions on Zoom so that we can get some ideas. And I think what's interesting to share, quite frankly, is that our team cares as much about this business as we do as owners, and they're looking for and trying to find and inventing and thinking about ways that we can keep our business moving forward, ways that we can keep innovating, ways that we can stay sort of vital. And it's a completely different perspective that it's really important business owners listen. When employees aren't in the space, they see it a little bit differently. It's kind of like stepping outside of the forest and seeing it as a whole, as opposed to being in the middle of it and trying to deal with the chaos and mayhem as it's happening. It really gives you time to think about different ways of doing things and making sure that not only are we doing the right things, but are we innovating? Are we thinking about what things will look like in the future? Are we thinking about what it's like to be at home and not know what to make for dinner and be looking for ideas on how to rework the space, etc. So there have been a lot of really positive conversations and ideas that come out of that angst, to be honest.
I know one thing that the partners and the executive team at Barriston did right away was they were sending almost daily memos out to people saying, these are the conversations we're having, and here's what we think it's going to look like for the next several days or the next week as things were changing so quickly. And I think you're right, just that acknowledgement from business owners to their people saying it's so important to us to keep things going was hugely important, I think, in keeping morale up and keeping that engagement level up. I know for Barriston, we always have a big Christmas party every year. And this year we had a magician and everyone logged in on YouTube. And I think many of us were disappointed to not get to dress up. But many people were relieved to not have to dress up and to enjoy a glass of wine while seated on a couch watching a magician and engaging with coworkers via chat. And I think one thing you absolutely struck on was in terms of rethinking the roles and the purposes of our businesses and what that looks like when working from home. From a legal perspective, do we just deliver contracts, or are we delivering a sense of comfort and security and knowledge and resourcefulness to our clients? And that was something that when you're removed from an office space, you really start to realize the key roles that different people on your teams play in delivering those services. Now, David, again, a little bit different. We've got servers, and obviously the restaurant industry was closed down with many of the COVID restrictions. Any thoughts to add on keeping communications open with employees or engagement?
Yeah, I definitely try to touch base with them as much as I can. We're very fortunate here with our staff. A lot of them have been here many years, and especially for a restaurant, it's really tough to come by. So, like you do really feel for them. You can't. There's nothing to really do. Like at least I have a few back working now. But yeah, just try to touch base, and we're thinking about it type of thing, and we'll kind of get through this together, get you back as soon as we can. So yeah.
And so one of the things that I think all of our four panelists have sort of mentioned is the importance of people, and given that Pierre has mentioned that one of his four big themes is going to be that labor shortage that's coming up, Laura, I'm going to kick this one to you first. How to attract good talent to your organization? So obviously this is an ongoing concern for businesses, but what do you think will change about the way organizations attract talent? Are there going to be lots of people interviewing saying, how did your organization respond to COVID? And how do companies want to be able to respond to that? How to attract top talent?
Yeah, and so like Pierre said, this isn't new. Actually, my colleague and I did a presentation at the Sandbox last year on how to attract talent, and this was before COVID. So it's not new. And I don't think I've seen it change too much actually through COVID. I have had people ask, what are you doing to respond? And I think the safety aspect of it is very important, but we're still recommending people do the same thing. So you'll want to promote what you have to offer. So do you have a benefits plan? Do you have a pension plan? Do you have flexible work arrangements? What safety protocol do you have in place? And really having your postings stand out. So explain, why would someone want to work here? And we often tell clients, go to your top few employees and ask why they like working here and what keeps them here. And then really highlight that in the top of your posting to say, this is what our employees are even thinking. And really personalize it. And really evaluate where you're putting your posting. So like, are you posting it on multiple sites? Are you asking employees to share it on their own social media, and maybe even having a recruitment incentive? So if you refer someone that you know, you can get maybe a gift card. It doesn't have to be a lot, but really having that personal side of it for, if your best employees are referring someone, that person's probably going to be a great fit for your organization. And it really didn't cost you much, and you're probably getting a great candidate there. So getting creative is always important, but really promoting what it is your business is all about, and then you'll get the right fit.
I love so much the idea of going to 3 of your sort of most senior employees, or 3 employees who perform so well. What a great way to just get at the idea of what your culture is as a corporation as well. Because as you say, if they're happy, they know what makes them happy and what is in the culture that makes them that way.
For sure. We often say, we call it a stay interview. So it's kind of like an exit interview, but for the people who've been there a while and they're your great employees. So what do you like the best? What would you change? What gets you motivated every day? What do you look forward to? Or my favorite is, what do you think of on your way home? Is it something, are you striving for your next day goals, or are you frustrated about something? What can we do to improve things, but also what's done really well?
That's awesome. And so for the rest of our panelists too, I'd like to open this up a little bit more broadly. When we're talking about relationships with employees, I think it's important to consider the way relationships change with suppliers, customers, employees, and even other local businesses. So I'll open this up to the rest of the panelists. Did your relationships with suppliers, with other businesses, whether it have been competitive businesses or complementary businesses, did you see any shifts there? Did you have to renegotiate any contracts, or did you package together some neat experiences to offer to clients with another business? Did you have any of those pairings that you had to consider during the last year? And maybe I'll start with Denise on this one.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the important thing to remember is that our competitors are not our competitors anymore. We're competing together against a pandemic. So we tried to, we had prepared to be involved in a couple of local shows, like home shows and things like that. So we had actually a surplus of product, and we had nowhere to sell it. So we partnered up with a number of restaurants locally, just a few, who were doing takeout, and we actually gave them little bottles of olive oil and balsamic vinegar to deliver with their takeout orders, with a coupon attached, sort of pushing to our website, and here's what we have. We still have customers coming in now who've said they received a little bottle with their Donnelly's order or whatever, and they had no idea the difference. We also tried, have worked with a couple of restaurants to make sure to provide olive oil and balsamic vinegar, to make sure that they had a good supply of it, to use it in their recipes. We've also done a number of contests where you get together with other local businesses on social media, for example, and offer some prizing that isn't just about your product, but combines other products that are complementary in the prize. So it engages people, and really that's what we're trying to do at this point, is engage people and keep that conversation going with the community. And that's about collaboration. That's not about competition, for sure.
I love that idea of the collaboration. And I know one thing that I saw, actually, you mentioned a couple of downtown restaurants. It appears with my last takeout order, I got a little flyer advertising a different delivery service. So, I know Uber Eats will often cut into the margins of the businesses they're delivering for. And it appears that there are some local businesses sort of teaming up to offer an alternative delivery service, which I thought was a great collaborative effort as well.
Yeah.
Ron, what have you seen in the way that relationships with suppliers or customers has changed or shifted?
Well, wow, that's a big question. But let's just deal with suppliers. And we obviously deal with a lot of local suppliers in the Barrie area. And when we started to see, everything shut down, we start talking to each and every one of them, how it would impact. We obviously have to carry, a fairly large inventory of supplies before, but then as the demand increased, we had to go almost daily, weekly discussions with them to forecast out what our demand would be and work with them, because they can only have so much capacity as well. And if they had to bring on other people. So just, a lot of communication, daily discussions with them, and try and understand what their needs were as well. David mentioned that when he had to lay off his associates, that was probably the darkest day in Napoleon, when we had to lay off all of our associates, our manufacturing associates. We were very proud of the fact that we hadn't laid a full-time manufacturing associates in over 16 years. So when we had to go to them and say, sorry, we have to shut down. But then we got really lucky, and I'm not know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'll give the name of a company. We got a hold of the owners of South Medic in the south part of Barrie, who were making masks and that. And we started talking, and we thought they needed people, and our people were being laid off. So 85 of our associates over, about 2 weeks, at first it started 20 and then 40, then 60, then 85, were able to work with them for about 6 or 8 weeks to get them to increase their production significantly. And two things came out of that. It was all volunteer. We just said, hey, if you want to go, and we'll help you, and brought supervisors in that, and they loved it. They loved the fact that they were giving back, that they were helping out. And those were still in those very dark, unknown days of what the future was going to bring. So that was a bit of a light on helping out in the community with just by chance that we were able to say, here's something that we can help out with. So that was our win of those dark days that we often talk about. And with our customers, we had regular webinars with them. First, we really wanted to talk about their preservation of business. So talking about the financial side of it, talking about the key cash is king. What are some of the cash accumulation things that they should be working on so they end up as strong as they possibly can? So we brought different experts to different webinars to talk about managing your receivables, or managing your cash flow, or how to balance your inventory better, just working with our customers, because most of them, that's one thing we're proud of in Napoleon. Sure, we have some of our products in big box, but the majority, over 65 of our sales, come from independent business owners. So we really wanted to reach out to them to say, how can we help you with some of the information? And the feedback that we received from them really gave us kind of an idea that we were adding value, which was our whole objective. But thank goodness the days are a little brighter today than they were back in March and April.
Well, that's such a tremendous story, and thank you for sharing that. I saw a comment pop up, and absolutely inspiring. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that was, like I said, and it was by chance. I would like to say it was a brilliance of brainstorming at Napoleon, but it just happened by, one of our owners talking to the owner of South Medic and say, hey, we're laying off, and we were just so distraught. No, we can need some. And it really rejuvenated our team when we were communicating all of this, because they felt like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We don't have to stay at home. And so it was kind of cool. It was pretty neat.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then David, for you, you've got employees, you've got customers, and you had mentioned that supply became less predictable during especially the initial shutdown. So any thoughts on how your communications changed with your suppliers or your employees or clients?
Well, our supplies didn't change a whole lot. Just it went down a lot because we obviously weren't ordering as much. So there was other like little issues with a couple that you have to order a certain amount and stuff, but it didn't really affect us a whole lot. It was more certain products, I guess, were harder to get. Like we get some really nice sushi tuna from Japan, so that was really hard to get in. Like so stuff like that kind of. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And we do have the Q&A kind of popping up with questions from the audience. So David, I'll start with you for one of these questions.
Sure.
If there was one thing that you wished the government would do or could do going forward, what would it be and what would it mean to your business?
I guess the biggest thing that hit us was the rent. You know, it was one of our smaller costs when we're running at 100%. But when the revenue dropped so much, it actually became one of our highest expenses. And then being shut down for a month and then switching to takeout. That right at the beginning, it would have helped us out quite a bit more if we had got a little bit of subsidy. But you know, like and you get it, like it's a balancing act, right? They're trying to open the economy, but you know, you have to watch the numbers for this virus, and that's I guess what we're talking about is keeping everybody safe still, right? So so hopefully, you know, Pierre's predictions are looking good. So the second half of 2021 will be a little more promising for everybody.
That's great. And Denise, for you, if you could ask the government for any one thing, what would it be, and what would the impact on your business be?
That's a good question. They did offer some pretty good programs that we were able to take advantage of. And I read recently that 75% of Canadian businesses report that they were able to survive because of the government programs. So I would say thank you for those programs, first of all. I would also say that I would have preferred for my friends in the retail industry who were not able to be open when I was able to be open and are not considered essential service. I would say that I would have preferred the playing field to have been leveled so that large big box retailers were not able to sell non-essential items. And I would ask that from a government who said they were focused on business, perhaps to pay a little bit more attention to leveling that playing field and supporting local businesses the same way they supported big businesses. And I think that's been a problem moving forward. I would also say that, you know, we have to decide as a community what we want retail to look like in this community and support that retail with your purchases, with your follows, with your likes, with your shares, with your support in any way, shape, or form, and not just go where it's most convenient. And I think the government's done a pretty good job, to be honest, because the number one goal has been to keep people safe and to keep those numbers down. And I think the best thing you can do for business moving forward right now is to stay safe and go out for essential items and take advantage of some of these other programs when you can, for sure.
That's an awesome comment. And I know for the city of Barrie in particular, having invested so much in the downtown core recently to sort of reface just that corridor of business, hopefully, as Pierre says, once this is done, people will be eager and willing to get out there and support their favorite local businesses.
I think that's true.
Yeah. And Ron, for you, if you had one wish list item that you could put to the government, what would it be and what would it mean for your business?
One wish, I'm glad I'm not in politics, because you can't do a good job if you're in politics from all the critics. And I you know what, I think, as Denise said, I think they've done a pretty darn good job. They you know, whether it's federal or provincial, they talk with sincerity. They talk about protecting, and could they have done a better job of the smaller business owner, and was there as many cases there, and should they have been as tight as, and you know, up in, I got a friend who has a store in Bracebridge, should that have shut down like the one in downtown Toronto? But you know what, I'll go back and say, wow, I think they've done a pretty darn good job overall I think the communication level that they've done has been excellent. I remember that first 2 to 3 weeks, at 11 o'clock from Prime Minister Trudeau, it was, I have a TV here and I'm just glued to it to figure out what the next was. So I think communication was there. I think the dollars have certainly been there and are quite large. Most importantly, what I heard from Pierre, which was really, really nice to hear, because I was very concerned that the government would start wanting to get back to a balanced budget or get this debt down immediately. So we heard things like HST doubling and personal and business taxes doubling. And we were going, oh my gosh, that's going to put us right back into, people going back and saving like money. So hearing from him, it's a long-term project, which makes total sense from my point of view. But you know what, again, I'm totally non-political, and I just, like I said, I wouldn't want to be in politics today. And I think our Canadian governments, certainly the Ontario and the federal governments, have done as good a job as I could have done. I can't criticize them. So we're pleased overall.
I know from a legal perspective, one thing that we found that the government did do, which helped a lot of tenants, was when they offered the commercial rent benefit.
Yeah,
they basically said you cannot evict a commercial tenant until you've applied for this.
Yeah.
And that did give some tenants the leverage they needed to go back to landlords.
Absolutely.
No system's ever perfect, but I felt like that was a tool that they gave to commercial tenants who had committed to long-term contracts that enabled them to start that conversation with the landlord, which I thought was quite helpful.
That was excellent.
Yeah. And Laura, what about you, from your perspective? Anything that you would have loved to have seen from an HR perspective that might help? Or I'm not sure how to properly frame this question for you, but if you had one wish list item, what would it be and why?
Oh, I would go back and not have them change it every few days, so that I'd be on the phone with clients and it would literally be changing as the announcement was coming out. But obviously the pivoting and the changing were necessary. So it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, it was challenging to keep up with the constant changes as we were giving advice. But that is what it is. And obviously it's been quite consistent as of late. So I agree with everyone else in that I think it was done well. We've had a lot of clients remain in business and succeed because of those programs. So I have no complaints either.
Perfect. And then another question from the audience. So with respect to the items of culture that have been raised by everyone on the panel, in this moment in time and going forward, how are you going to onboard potential new employees just to ensure that continuity of culture and to make sure they feel part of a team?
Do you want me to start? Because that's certainly been a big issue with us. We felt we had a very effective onboarding, very relationship, whether you were in an office and you're in a factory, you toured whatever area you were. We've gone virtual. We've done virtual now. We've taken all of our orientation programs, all of our training programs, and gone virtual. And it's not ideal, but and now you're talking to people, especially that are office related. Oh my gosh, I've not met you before, and it's so foreign to us. But it's all gone virtual. And is it as good as? No, I don't think so, because we'd have an orientation every week. And Napoleon and Barry here, we'd have an orientation program, whether you were an assembler or whether you were a marketer, you were all in there, because for the most part, the orientation is about the culture, is about the processes. But we just have to do it all virtually.
And Laura, any tips for employers who are onboarding individuals during this time?
I think check-ins. So yes, whether it's sending them a canned presentation or hopefully able to do it over Zoom where you can have that personal touch, going through all your programs, all those things as to what attracted them there. Let's remind them of all these things that we're doing as an organization, especially through COVID. If you have resources like an EAP program, anything that's going to help them and their families. But additionally, checking in with them throughout that first week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it is, and also connecting them to the people that they're going to be working with. So setting up meetings with some of their colleagues that they would have met if they were in the office to ensure they know who to go to for what. And then just having that personal touch, because Zoom's not always great, but it's better than nothing for sure.
I think we all got used to kind of taking even vocal communication for granted at first. I know we were all just so intent on getting work done that it was all about emails, but luckily with Zoom and telephone, who knew, that became a little bit easier just to kind of keep in touch and keep that personal element of culture alive. Denise, what about you? So onboarding new staff or bringing staff back when you're able to reopen your locations, any thoughts on how you're going to sort of orient people in the new operations?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, because for some of our staff, our business has changed so significantly that there are new processes and new policies and new procedures and new products, quite frankly, that they're not even aware of. To be honest, we're actually undergoing a physical transformation in our South End Barrie store to increase the size of our warehouse or our online fulfillment center, and decrease the space in our retail, which changes your whole leasing arrangement, quite frankly. But it also changes the way people work. So our stores don't even look the same as they did a year ago, to be honest. And it means that things that you take for granted, finding things, looking for things, the way you process things, online orders, that sort of process is completely different than it was before. So it's also about perhaps setting up some coaching arrangements between team members so that it's not, a canned presentation or a binder, of how to run the business or how to operate on a daily basis and the things you need to do, but maybe setting up a coaching relationship so that we can all start to learn from each other a little bit better. Because what we have learned from our team and from our customers is that the relationship we have with our customers is much more intimate than it was a year ago. So we've learned from that, and that means that everything we do has changed.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to add to that. That's a great kind of encapsulation of what every business owner is going to be looking forward to, and when we can get everyone back in the offices. And then David, anything to add to that? So when you're, business as usual, we've got vaccines up, people are back in the restaurant. How are you reorienting and onboarding your staff again?
I should have most of my staff back. So because I have been touching base with them. And again, we have been very fortunate. There's, we retain our staff very well for the restaurants. So not too many places to hint on there. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I do see, actually, I'm getting a little notice that we're about to hit that 2:30 mark, which is the end of our Entrepreneurs in Action for 2021. I know I still had lots of questions. And so for anyone who's in the audience out there, if there's a question you have that you want to ask, feel free to forward it to Sandbox and they can distribute it out to any of our panelists or our experts. We're happy to facilitate those communications. And again, a really big thank you to our panelists, David Ronald of Crazy Fox, Denise Sindel-Tucker of the Olive Oil Company, Ron MacArthur of Wolf Steel Ltd, and Laura Gibbons of BDO Consulting. And as always, a huge thank you to Pierre Cléroux from the BDC. We so enjoy your presentations each and every year. Love that there's a positive outlook coming for us in 2021. And hopefully for our audience members, there was something in this presentation. I'm sure there were lots of things that I can take from it. So hopefully everyone got something that they can take from it to help them, or maybe something to try out in 2021. We so appreciate the support of Sandbox, BDC, BDO, and Barriston for being able to put on these presentations. And also thank you to my co-host Ryan. And again, if anyone has any questions that we didn't touch on, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat box, or reach out to Sandbox Centre, and we'll try and get back to everybody's questions as well that way. So thank you to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.